would say your full name just so we have it on the tape?
Sure. Susan Adele Calamari.
And would you tell me a little bit about, like, where were you born, where were you raised, that sort of stuff?
Sure. I was actually born in Denville, New Jersey, but my father was in the Army, and then they're from here. So just my first year of my life, I was in New Jersey, but then the rest I've been here until 97. I went to Dallas for a year and then back in 98 and have been here ever since.
So when you say here, do you...
New Orleans, well, Metairie.
Okay.
Born and raised, raised in Metairie.
Okay, and how far is Metairie from here at the UNO campus?
15 minutes.
Okay. Some of these questions may be real obvious to you, but the people who might
Sure.
be looking at this have no idea. So tell me a little bit about growing up in Metairie. What is it about, what was your upbringing or pre-Katrina years? Let's focus on that.
And most of my family's here and very close to family, and it was just, I live in my neighborhood where I live, and I'm actually back in my parents' house. They, since Katrina, have both passed away, but I'm back in the house I grew up in, and that's how much I like the area. And there's a playground at the end of the street, so it's just a very family-oriented neighborhood. And it's close to everything. I'm close to New Orleans, I'm close to Kenner, I'm, centrally located.
So a lot of people have talked about the culture here in Louisiana and how family-based their activities are. Would you speak a little bit about, what do you do? Like every week or so, what are the activities you engage in other than working?
There's always festivals to be found around the city somewhere, music to go listen to. It's fun just to be a tourist in this city. And recently my uncle, who lives out in California, came in town, and you have to go get coffee and donuts down on the quarter, a muffalata from Central Grocery Store. There's just certain spots you have to hit that you grew up with them. But you have Jazz Fest, Mardi Gras, parades for St. Patrick's Day. There's always something to do in this city.
Tell us a little bit about the Italian-Irish parade that's happening this Sunday.
It's
in Metairie, right?
It's in Metairie. It's very family-oriented, but it's along the lines of the other ones. There's marching groups, there's floats, they throw produce, beads, you get flowers. But Metairie's more family-oriented. There'll be green beer, there'll be Jello shots, all that. But it's a fun event.
So when you say they throw produce, would you describe what that means?
Why? You could just it's a tradition, and they'll throw anything from cabbage to carrots, onions, garlic. You might catch a box of macaroni and cheese, ramen noodles. It's just but potatoes. It's just so you actually go to the parade and you come home with groceries. So.
And so I could get my head hit with a cabbage, or
if you're not paying attention, yes, you could. Yes, you could.
Now, when I was here, they told us that that particular parade and any of the ones where they gave you cabbage or whatever was so you could have corned beef and cabbage. Is that true?
Yeah, I guess for some, yes, it is. But and then some people, they'll bring a wagon with them to the parade just so they can get all their loot home after because some people, to me, I'm only going to catch as much as I'm going to use. 20 cabbage, you're not going to eat 20 cabbages.
So you lived in Metairie before Katrina. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you during Katrina. Did you
Well, this was the first time ever in my whole lifetime that we actually evacuated for a hurricane. I've lived here most of my life, and we've never left. We've been without power. But this time everybody was leaving, so we did leave, and we were gone for about 5 to 6 weeks, which was my brother and my boyfriend came back into town to just check people's houses to see, because you weren't allowed to come in, so we had to be away for a good bit of time. But everybody just, their goal was to get back home fixed. And where I live in Metairie, I was very lucky. If the levee would have broken on our side of the canal, I would have had 10 feet of water in the house, but it went into New Orleans instead of Metairie.
So when you say this was the first time you left for a parade, for a hurricane, sorry, got parade on my brain. First time you left for a hurricane, why is that? Because people outside of New Orleans don't necessarily understand that logic.
Well, up to this point, we've never had one, I would say, as serious as Katrina. So we've always just, we'd all come to one house and stay there. The family would be together, but this was the first time ever that, by watching the news, everybody saw that, this is going to be a lot worse than what everybody thinks. So it's best to get, well, plus they were making you, if you stayed, you couldn't leave. You had to stay in your house. You couldn't be traveling around.
So where did you go when you left?
Well, first we stayed with some friends in Natchez. And then my boyfriend's family has a house in Sulphur, Louisiana, right outside of Lake Charles. So we went there. The whole family went there. And we were there for about 5 weeks. And 2 days after we left, Hurricane Rita came through and destroyed the house that we were staying in for Katrina. Trees fell on it, the roof was, so we had just left to come back, and then 2 days later that storm went through up there, or over there, and destroyed that house.
Wow.
So
it took you 5 weeks to get back into the city?
Right, to get back to where they were actually letting you come and you could stay. People could come and check on things, but you had no power. So you were limited to what you could, And they came back, emptied out refrigerators, freezers, that kind of stuff, just to, but.
And so your house didn't flood?
Did not.
So
not.
So what all did you have to do? You didn't have electricity,
right?
But you didn't have to worry about mold and stuff, did you?
No, not at all. That was here in this building.
So tell me a little bit about UNO, because you worked here then, right?
Right, I did. We weren't allowed to come on campus, but we were one of the few buildings on campus that had water in it. And because they didn't tend to it quickly enough, even though it was only about 18 inches on the first floor, the mold went all the way up to the third floor because it just sat for so long.
How long did it sit?
I would say over maybe 2 or 3 months. And then we had remediation people come in. We still weren't allowed to come back in, and they went through and, ripped up stuff that was damaged. Had to replace sheetrock downstairs.
So where did you work during this?
In the beginning, we were allowed to work from home. And then once we were in the building, we probably really shouldn't have been in the building, but we were. And then they moved us over to that dormitory right next door. Several of the offices on campus were set up in that old dormitory. And we were there for about a year. And then we finally came back.
So students that had been going to UNO or planning on coming to UNO that fall, did they have places to stay in the dorms?
They did a lot of online stuff, but I really don't think any of the dorms or anything really opened back up until that following semester.
Into the spring.
Right.
Okay, so you are thankfully not in a house in Natchez.
Right.
You were able to seek refuge near Lake Charles. You came back about 5 weeks after Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
And then, was anything really different for you?
Well, things were different in that a lot of places weren't open back up yet, or they had different hours, like grocery stores and restaurants. It took a while for a lot of things to come back.
When you say a while, like how long?
It just depends. The grocery stores, they would have limited hours. I'd say about 6 months. Some restaurants, if they had damage, might be a year.
And that's in Metairie.
Metairie, because Metairie had its own problems in that I can't even, Aaron Broussard sent the pump operators away for safety reasons. So really he should not have sent them away because they weren't able to turn the pumps on. So a lot of people had water in their homes, not because of the storm, but because the pumps weren't allowed to be turned on. But still, in my case, our house was high enough up that it came up to the doorstep, and that was it. So it was close, but it did not go in.
So what do you think, are there any differences between how you think of Metairie and New Orleans pre-Katrina versus now post-Katrina?
Well, some people left and never came back. Then you have people.
You knew?
A few. And then I have a friend that moved because she said she would never go through it again. And this is the first time in her whole lifetime that we've ever had to go through something like this. And she moved up to Shreveport, but that lasted about a year, so she's back now. So people move away, and then they still end up coming back.
Why is that?
I can tell you, I lived in Dallas for about a year, and it's just coming from here, living in Dallas was very different. It was so much bigger, and here I find it's more family oriented. Oh, where did you go to high school? Where did you, do you know this one? Do you know that one? And in Dallas, it wasn't like that at all. Everybody was in it for themselves and not, oh, where do you live? What area do you live? Not. But I'm glad I did it, but it made me appreciate here all the more.
So tell us a little bit about your job here at the Track Center.
I have been here 18 years in February. It was 18 years. And I'm the office manager, so I do a little bit of everything.
And what was the original purpose of this facility?
It's a training, resource, and assistive technology center, and they deal mostly with blind and low vision clients. Teach them how to use the computer through voice-activated software, teach them Braille classes, and then sometimes we have students that come from out of town and they live up on the 3rd floor while they're going to class here. And then we have residential rooms on the 3rd floor that when they're not used by our students, people rent them out, visiting professors, parents from students on campus, just different. We have a jazz ensemble coming on Monday that'll be staying upstairs, the quartet. And so now I am responsible for booking all the rooms on the 3rd floor and the conference rooms on the 1st floor. So.
And how did you get involved with this facility?
Actually, one of my best friends, her mother was the secretary here, and she was getting ready to retire. And they told me about the job, and I interviewed, and they liked me, and the rest is history. I came on, she was here for about 3 months, and then she retired, and I've been here ever since.
So I'm going to jump around a little bit here. Tell me a little bit about Muse's Parade.
That's an interesting parade. It's a female parade, and they have their throws are, each of them is allowed to bring 35 shoes that they decorate themselves on the float. And you have to, really the only way you're going to get one is if you know somebody. And this past year I had 2 friends riding. If you make a sign, it's very helpful because they can see you. And they were both on lower deck, so I actually ended up with 2 shoes this year. So it's about the equivalent of a Zulu coconut. So.
And do you have the shoes here?
I do.
Let's see. So the people who come back here, we kind of covered that a little bit. You come back because the family is...
For me, it was family.
You also mentioned people who were not coming back or who did not come back. would you describe some of the reasons why you think that happened?
One of my friends in particular, she said she didn't want to ever have to go through evacuating and the stress of it, because it was a nightmare getting out of the city, because you just imagine everybody trying to get out of here at once. And you were in traffic for a long time. Gas stations were running out of gas. People were running out of gas on the road. It was, it was not pretty.
So one of the things that we try to do is give everybody the opportunity to say whatever you would want people to know about this area. So New Orleans, Metairie, folks who've never been here before or who don't know much about Louisiana, what would you want them to know about this region of the country?
It's a great place to come visit. It's family oriented. There's always something to do. If you like music, there's, the bars never close. If you like to drink. And lots of festivals always going on. Jazz Fest, Mardi Gras.
Are you at all worried about crime in this city?
You just have to be smart. Travel in pairs, don't go anywhere by yourself. Just to me, if you were anywhere, you need to be cautious. If you're walking by yourself, it's probably not a wise thing to be on your cell phone, because your guard is down and you're not paying attention to your surroundings.
Any questions from you guys? What you're curious about? I always like to give other people an opportunity in case there's something I've missed.
I had a question actually. I'm sorry, my nose is really stoney, so please forgive me for not sounding great. Do you think that the student culture around on campus has changed since Katrina?
I would say maybe it has, but I don't know if it's actually brought more people here or actually it's kind of taken some away, because some people, like the university in Hammond, their enrollment has gone way up as ours has declined since Katrina. We're working on getting it back up, but there's stuff going on campus. There's all, but